Goldman's got a 50-50 chance of that delisting happening. What are the key factors that are in the balance here that could push that either way?
Well, it's to state the obvious, the process will likely begin in mid-September in Hong Kong, and the results will be out by the end of this year. So in a few months' time, we get a pretty good sense of whether the 160 ADRs that have been identified by the SEC for non-compliance with the Holding Foreign Company Accountable Act will be able to continue their U.S. listing going forward. Now, as you just mentioned, the two sides signed an agreement just 2 weeks ago. So finally, we have a framework or a path to avert delisting risk for the ADRs. But as suggested by U.S. regulators, this is just the first step. And in the end, whether ADRs will eventually be delisted depends on how the inspection process will be implemented and whether the U.S. can get what they want from the process. So considering the uncertainty around the inspection outcome, we recently introduced a market-based barometer to help investors quantify to what extent the delisting concerns are discounted in equity prices. So conceptually, we're able to extract the delisting factor from market pricing and then transfer that or transform that into a probability-based time series. So as you said, right now, the barometer that we have suggests that the market is still pricing in about 50% chance that a delisting risk will, or delisting scenario will materialize.
Okay, so 50-50, but the chances of avoiding delisting, of reaching some sort of a deal, have been improving. If a deal is reached, what sort of revaluation might we expect to see for some of these Chinese ADRs?
You're right. So if you go back just a few months' time, back in mid-March, the barometer at that time was pricing in or suggesting the market was pricing in 95% chance that a delisting could happen. Of course, at that time, the ADR market was having a very tough time because of the delisting concern as well as other regulatory tightening concerns. So in other words, we have already seen quite meaningful moderation in delisting concerns based on market pricing. But in terms of potential upside, if we do get a kind of resolution and completely removal of delisting risk in market pricing, sensitivity suggests that the market may be, well, particularly for ADRs, we could see potentially 15% upside from here.
Right. Despite the potential for that upside, what are your expectations for the many crackdowns that we've seen from Beijing in the past year, whether it's on tech or education and so forth, and what will the implications of that be for the markets?
Well, we've been pretty I would say, explicit about that regulatory tightening expectation. So the story that we've been painting is that we believe the regulatory tightening intensity is going to moderate from here. In fact, we have another proprietary indicator to help us measure where are we in the regulatory tightening cycle. Based on that barometer, we were at the peak level, historical peak level, just about 12 months ago. And now we're back to sort of more neutralized territory in terms of regulatory tightening intensity. And going forward, we still think that the cycle is going to improve, particularly on a transparency basis, meaning that we'll likely get more clarity about regulatory implementation. So the companies can adjust and to move forward. So I think yes.
I'm sorry, now how much of that clarity do you expect to come from the party Congress, and will this make a significant change in investing conditions?
Well, we'll likely see more clarity over the next few months. And in fact, if you look at the policy statements coming from whether it is from the State Council or from other important commissions under the party, seems like the authorities are putting more emphasis on supporting the platform economy. So it seems like we're heading to that direction. But on the party Congress specifically, I think maybe after the event, we'll likely get better policy implementation or coordination, particularly after all the personnel issues will be kind of confirmed.